Okay, hello everyone. Um, just wanted to post something. I don't know if I want to do it daily until Purim, but I want to do it relatively often. Um, as always, anyone who listens, if you grow from it, then I consider that worthwhile. And if not, hopefully I'll grow from it. So the Megillah says, "Vahi me Achashverosh," and it wasn't the times of Achashverosh. And Chazal say, "Omer Levi Tanjanas and those that Messiahs be over here that Me'anjanas Agdola from Anjanas Agdola Kol Malgu Shemar Vayhi be made." Anytime it says that it was in the times of Ein El Shansar, it's only a language of Tsar. Kavasei Mechashverish Havi Haman. So essentially, what we want to know is two things. You want to understand what does what does Chazal quote this directly from the Anjanas Agdola. Because the idea of Amr Davar B'Shem Amra, meaning that if you say something in the name of the person who said it, maybe Gu'ul Olam, even though funny enough, we learned that out from Megillah's Esther, but this idea wouldn't apply because L'chaira, Anji Nas Zagdala was a body of a bunch of people. So, simply speaking, there is no Shem Amra because Anji Nas Zagdala, that's a body of people, it's not a single person. So it's not like in the Gemara that throughout the Gemara they're very ridiculous about quoting the name of the specific person. But over here it's a body of people. So that idea doesn't apply. We want to know perhaps there's an idea of a reason why the Anshe Knesset Zagdel themselves specifically were brought are brought as the makar for this Messiah. And then we want to know, so it's Kol Magshana Vahi Bimei. So we want to understand what is the simplest shot of this Gemara. The Gemara is saying it's a medrash, it's everywhere. It's a very, very makubal thing. When it says, and it was in the times of, that's a lashon tsa'ar. That implies pain, and that implies, pain for the Jewish people, or for everyone. Even one can even say for everyone. And the shadow is why. I mean, what's the simple shot, and what is it trying to say? And it's Vahibi means, and it was in the times. Okay, so what? How does that imply tsar? It doesn't really make that much sense to her. Okay, so that is the first thing, and then the other chazal that maybe we'll try to connect to this and give a hesber in is the second one. It's a Yitzchak Pasach Megillah Pasach Zeb. Vervos tzadikim yismachav Mushal Rashi Yanacham. He says B'shar Shat tzadikim notlim gedula. When the tzadikim when they get gedula, greatness, there is joy and happiness in the world. There's a vai, which is like a, oh no, and nacha, and there's like a sighing, and there is anger in the world. So it's like, oh no, that Achashverosh was Melech. So again, we really have the same question, and then I guess one can ask that even though you're going to say that Achashverosh was a Russia, and that's true, but L'chara Achashverosh was like the third or fourth king at this point that had Malchus, and so why specifically over here by Achashverosh's Malchus do we have the Megillah pointing out that it's Vai and it's by Hibi Mei, whereas by the other Malachim, simply speaking, we don't have anything like Vayhi Mei Nebuchadnezzar, right? Who Luchar was the person who himself destroyed the Beis Hamikdash. So why don't we have that by him, or by Belshazzar, or by any of the kings that ruled up until Achashverosh? So it's a little bit hard to understand why Dafku Lagabe Achashverosh was it said this Vayhi Mei, which we're darshaning to mean a lashon of tsar. I mean, in addition to the fact, L'chara Achashverosh, ends up it ends up being that he allows Mordechai and Esther to send the seals to save the Jewish people and for them to have their and for them to have the Yeshua. So it's a little bit hard to understand what does it mean that Achashverosh is a Rasha. Not only that, the way that Chazal, as you see over here, the way Chazal say Hu Achashverosh. Why does their pasuk repeat Hu Achashverosh? So say Chazal Hu Berisha Mitchilas Bet Zeifa. Achashverosh was a Rasha from his beginning to his end. So l'chara, that itself is a problem. And that's not the pashtus, because the pashtus would have been that in the beginning he was a Rasha because he allowed Haman to take the initiative and to give his ring and to destroy Jewish people, and therefore he's a Rasha for that. But in the end, he's not a Rasha because he also allows Mordechai to do what he wants. So the most you should be able to say is that this person simply has no real sense of self. He has no real malchus. He has no real sense of what he is and what he wants and what he believes. Rather, he just swayed by everyone around him. So, since when is that the definition of a Rasha? If anything, I would say, okay, Nebuchadnezzar was a Rasha. He took the initiative. He destroyed the Beis HaMikdash. So that also has to be answered. So we'll start from the beginning, and we'll say a very, very simple pshat. And just to realize it is a fascinating idea, which is that when you're talking about something that's written, for sure, I think Paskin we say that Esther was Baruch HaKodesh, definitely Ne'emra. Some say it was Nichta Baruch HaKodesh, but there are many Tanaim that even hold that Esther was Nichta Baruch HaKodesh. So this is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Whatever you want to say, that obviously the Ruach HaKodesh has less darga than Chumash, but it's still from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, so now if we actually look at the words, we actually just at face value, we try to understand what these words are saying in context of the fact that it's coming from a makar of Ruach HaKodesh and from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, from a Neviah. Esther's a Neviah. Okay. What does it mean? Vayhi, and it was, bimei, someone. Vayhi bimei essentially is saying that the event that I'm about to describe took place in the days of someone. Now, as something be written in Makar from Ruach HaKodesh, what on earth does that even mean? What does it mean, the days of Achashverosh? There is no, Achashverosh doesn't have days. Events don't take place within time periods of kings, of Goyim. Everything, all of the world, all of the events of the world, and everything that happens in this world happens in the reality of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is geyser that it should happen. Like the Gemara says, a person is not noikef and etzba. A person doesn't lift even a small finger without it being nigzar. It was already decreed milamala from Hashem that's what would happen. So what kind of apikarsis, what kind of weird, incorrect statement to make is it that the Megillah, which is written in Baruch HaKodesh, would describe an event as taking place in the times of someone? Bimei Achashverosh. It took place in the Bimei Achashverosh. In Achashverosh's times. There was no such thing. That's like saying, Vahi Bimei Trump, Vahi Bimei Obama, Vahi Bimei... There's nothing, the words make no sense. The words are not emes, l'chara. How could it be that it's in the times of something it took place? It's like being meyaches what took place to the fact that it's in the times of this person. L'chara, that's not true. Everything only takes place within the reality of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants it to happen. And because HaKadosh Baruch Hu allows it to happen. It's His will that it happens. The entire world is makomo shel olam. Everything that transpires in this world is simply an expression of the will of God. And therefore, what the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah are telling us is a very, very deep and correct and fascinating yesod, which is that when it says the words Vayhi bimei, and it was in the times of what something, someone, essentially what's going on is the following thing. As is very well known, there is a concept of Bereshis. Bereshis does not mean that the world was created in its beginning, Bereshis bara Elokim. Bereshis means in its head, in its rosh. And what that means is that just like the rosh, the head, is the operating mechanism, the operating system, the OS of the entire body, because all of the body gets its signals from its head. So too, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world, He created it in its rashis. That means that everything that happens and transpires throughout history is transpiring in a manner of development taking place within HaKadosh Baruch Hu and within His hashgacha of the world and His will for it to develop and keep developing, and as events unfolding according to His will, so that the world will come to its conclusion. The world itself, and the simplest understanding of the manner in which events occur, the most encompassing understanding, is that things are going towards their completion. And therefore, the idea is that in general, there is no concept of Vayhi bimei, someone. There can't be a concept of Vayhi bimei, someone, because nothing ever happens in the times of a person, a human being that exists in the world. Everything just happens because HaKadosh Baruch Hu's will is for it to unfold in an overall trajectory for the world to be and come to its completion. And therefore, what the Anshe Agdola understood from the words Vayhi bimei was that the words Vayhi bimei mean that the event that's occurring, Kaviyachol, is now happening as if the totality of the reality of Hashgacha, meaning the total reality of Hashgacha, which exists at the point these events are happening, is non-existent, and it's as if they're happening under the proxy of and in the times of Achashverosh. So this is the metzius of what this idea of Vayhi bimei means. Vayhi bimei, why does Vayhi bimei mean lashon tsar? So, as we're saying, and if you look through the Medrash brings it brings not many places. It brings, I think it says 10 places. It brings places, and where it says Vayhi bimei, and essentially the reoccurring theme and the idea of Vayhi bimei is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, for the sake of the development and the narrowing of Klal Yisrael and of their options, and to develop them, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will kaviyachol step away from his anhaga of metzius, of reality, kaviyachol, and he will allow events to unfold according to the manner in which the person who it says Vayhi bimei of is allowing them to unfold. And therefore, it's a lashon of tsar, because a lashon of tsar, as Marash Hashiva Rabbi Yochanan Zurag Shlita explains, the lashon of tsar means that it comes from the word tsar, which means narrow, and the idea is that in order for something that has two options in front of it, in order for it to be pressed to the point that it chooses a specific manner of self-expression, one way over the other, it needs to be narrowed. And that is one of the biggest mahalas of Zman Hazeh, that there is too many options. and people have a hard time choosing things. And so what HaKadosh Baruch Hu does is, especially for Klal Yisrael at that time, is that he makes an event which is pain on one avenue of self-expression, and that avenue of self-expression is no longer an option. And Memela, it comes out that the tsar which occurred ended up narrowing the path and the avenues of self-expression for the people whom the tsar occurred to. And therefore, the Vayhi Bimei is a Lashon Tsar, and obviously, like the Medrash and the Gemara say, that the Ha'avara, the transferring of the ring from Haman to Achashverosh to Haman, did more for Klal Yisrael, for their development, than 48 Nevi'im that stood up and tried to be Mechiach them. And this is Yisai, which is that the Vayhi Bimei is the Lashon of Tsar, the Sharish Tsar, and therefore it comes to narrow an avenue of self-expression for Klal Yisrael who were there at the time, and it presses them to choose only a singular path of self-expression, i.e., crying out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and fasting, etc. And that is clearly the catalyst for them to be able to now be nigal, which is why we see that the son of Achashverosh is the one who ends up calling for them to go back to Yerushalayim and to build it up, and that was the Geula. So immediately we have the Hezber, why Vayhi Bimei means that there's a Lashon Tsar, and what the taich of that Lashon Tsar is, and what it means, and what it comes to do. And it's further possible to say that the reason for the fact that the Gemara is miyacheset and specifically mentions that it's coming from the Masorah from Anshe Knesset Agdola is because, as is well known, the Anshe Knesset Agdola were the ones who, when it said by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it says Hakel Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanoira. It says HaKadosh Baruch Hu was Gadol, he was big, and he was Gibor, and he was a Noira. And each of the Nevi'im, when they heard that, Yirmiyahu won, and each Navi, as time went on, they stopped saying it, because when they saw that everyone was going into Galus, they said, Ayin Noira Oisav. And they said, oh, how is HaKadosh Baruch Hu great? How is HaKadosh Baruch Hu revered? Because his nation is going into Galus, etc., etc. Each one had a different reason why he stopped saying one of those options, and the Anshe Knesset Agdola were the ones who said that they're the ones who restored the Gadol Gibor V'Hanoira through the fact that they said they were able to reorient and re-understand the Metzias of Gadol Gibor V'Hanoira within the reality of Galus, and they were able to appreciate the Metzias of HaKadosh Baruch Hu not on the level which he is nigle, but they're able to appreciate him on the level that he is nistar, meaning that, like, one of the examples is that that it says that that the Gedula or the Neiros of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is that since we're in Galus and we're one seh and we're among all the nations and still we're miskayim, even though they're constantly trying to kill us, that itself is the Neiros of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That itself is his greatness. And what essentially that means is that the Anshe Knesset Agdola was the body of people who were responsible for the tikkun of the Shmoneh Esrei and the reinstitution of the Gadol Gibor and the Noira, and the aside of which is that they were able to recognize and reinvigorate a heker, of HaKadosh Baruch Hu within the reality of the process of the Galus and the Geula. And that is why it meyaches this Meimer dafka to the Anshe Knesset Zagdayla. And then, so that is that Yesod.